Croeso all to Fearless in Devotion, the Wrexham AFC podcast, which is sponsored by the Fat Boar Bar and Restaurant. Wrexham are back in the Football League and we were treated to quite a show at the racecourse this weekend. Andy, what were your first thoughts on a big day for Wrexham, 15 years in the making?
Yeah, it was a big day. I think maybe the occasion got to them a little bit. Star-studied. It's weird, isn't it? Star-studied audience, but we didn't really bat an eyelid that Hugh Jackman was there. He's sort of like, well, Hugh Jackman. Oh yeah, okay, this week, yeah. And what a massive star! My mum is the most happy she's ever been about a Wrexham crowd. She was midway to driving there. Right, let's go through the match. Firstly, conditions. I think MK Don played the conditions a hell of a lot better than we did. The pitch was heavy. We couldn't really get our passing game going. MK Dons took that out of the equation by not using the pitch at all. They were a big team. They got at us. I think they outfoxed us, especially in the first half. I think if you go through each section of the team, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a little bit here, but I've just been thinking about it on the way down. So you go through each section of the team, right? Foster, we've let 5 goals in. I can't really blame him for any of the 5, but I think he could have done better in 2 of them. And is it a worry that your keeper doesn't even try and make a save for the 5th one? A little bit. One to keep an eye on there, Foster. We know before that Foster can have not an overtly bad game, but a poor game and come back the next game and be absolutely brilliant. So the jury is still out on that one. Defense, I think we needed the physicality of Aaron Hayden. I really do. I think when I was looking at them Dons warming up, I was there. They're a big bunch. Them. You needed someone physically intimidating, someone who could, with pace and physique, also a goal threat. We can't put that to one side. So I would have definitely gone for Hayden there. Midfield, I'm sorry. Look, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I can here, but I've never really been a big fan of Andy Cannon. I saw him play an absolutely brilliant match against Dagenham and Redbridge last season. He was superb, untouchable. The problem is Dagenham and Redbridge midfield just absolutely didn't go near him all game. They gave him as much space as he wanted, and he absolutely tore them apart. You're not going to get that in most other games, and I think MK Dons especially targeted him. Didn't give him any space or time, and we couldn't really break any lines on there. Lastly, up front, Dolby and Waters didn't work for me. I feel sorry for Billy. I think he's a lad who works extremely hard. I wonder if he's going to cut through into this team. It's a shame, but we all knew that would be some people who wouldn't really come with us on this journey, and I do wonder if I feel horrible saying this because apparently he's such a lovely fella, but I do sort of think, are we better off with the likes of even Bickerstaff as we wait for Mullin? Sorry, I know I've monopolised things there, but there you go. I'm out.
Wow, that felt like it was 15 years in the making. I'm not sure there's anything left to say. But
that went on longer than the actual game yesterday.
We'll try our best because there are 4 of us here. Tim, can you be more concise? And I never thought I'd say this. Can you be more concise than Andy?
Are you trying to say that I'm never concise?
No, I would never suggest such a thing.
Defensive shambles, got what we asked for and got what we deserved, basically. Rabbit in the headlights for the large part of it. Had a bit of a mini comeback, but let's be honest, the result was never in doubt. They were loads of people produced Opta stats on Twitter after we had 25 shots on goal. Felt like a Dean Saunders debrief. Like, it doesn't matter.
Sorry, can I come in on that? Can I come on that for a second? I saw Dean Saunders there, and I texted him after, and I said, "Dean, what did you think of the game?" And he gave me a list of stats.
Did he just give you that script from which you've just written?
No, he didn't give me that, but he gave me a load of stats, and I just replied to him. I said, "Dean Saunders loves a stat."
Dean Saunders was sat next to me. Yeah,
I mean, look, MK Dons were clinical. I don't think we were quite maybe prepared for the sort of physicality they offered. They were really, really good. We can't shy away from that. But yeah, it's I'm trying to take the same diplomatic route that I took when I watched Wales at 2016 in the Euros. Is that I'm just glad to be here. I'm just glad to be back in the league at this stage. That'll wear off, 4 or 5 games in if we've only got 3 points or whatever. But I think we only won one of the first 3 last season, one of the first 4 the season before last. So we're not the fastest starters out of the blocks this season. So we still scored 3 goals against a team and we won't come up against that pace every week. I'm sure that their front two were unbelievable.
Yeah, actually, I'll pick up on that before I come to you, Liam. Isa and what was the other chap's name?
Lecco.
Lecco.
You don't pay the Lecco.
He was superb. They were both fantastic, actually. Scored far too easily. But yeah, obviously quality players, and that first goal shocked us as well, didn't it? Obviously, totally needless. When you quite painful watching that. I'm sure Owen O'Connell wouldn't like watching that back. But to get some of the cliches out of the way, best to have your reality check on the very first day of the season rather than have it sort of Christmas time. Liam, what were your thoughts?
Well, it wasn't really the greatest show for Hugh Jackman, was it?
My mum would have loved that.
Absolutely no need to laugh so heavily.
Come on, go. Let's have a deep dive into some other Hugh Jackman films, Liam. Go
on. X-Men.
It was all quite Les Miserables at the racecourse yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, weren't the X-Men? They were the X-Men.
So yeah, but I'm gonna cut that there before it gets out of hand. It felt a bit like being the new kid at school. I was quite sort of excited, looking forward to it, and then the big bully comes along and pulls your pants down in front of the class. It wasn't the greatest performance by any stretch of the imagination. We'll probably come on to things like team selection shortly, I would imagine, but do I think Parky would pick that team again if he could? I wouldn't have thought so, but there's enough positives to take from it. That's what I'm trying to do, because lest we forget, I predicted a defeat. I'm not happy about it, but I just thought we were due a bit of a humbling, a bit of a reminder that, look, this isn't going to be easy. And I think Tim mentioned it, we have had slow starts before in seasons, so I don't think it's, it wasn't an entire surprise to me. It was a bit of I think that the number of goals we conceded was more of the bit that concerned me. But I'll try and take positives. Like I think we look better when we have Ollie Palmer on the pitch than when we don't. Jordan Davis getting the goal that he did was really good. I think people have discounted him too easily after last season. That was a finish that an EFL player would make. So I'm taking that as a positive.
Yeah, can we talk about team selection? I think, are we all agreed here that it's not the most sensible decision to play your best midfielder at centre-back? I know this was obviously an ongoing concern last season, but haven't we just signed a centre-back who, and we had one on the bench who was been one of our better players of the last 2 seasons?
One on the bench. We had about 3 on the bench. I mean, I couldn't get, I mean, we all know how versatile Tom O'Connor is, but he shouldn't be a victim of that. He should be a centre midfielder. Now, the way that if I were the Dons manager and I was looking at that team, I would be licking my lips. I would have been saying, right, they played right into us here, because you needed a midfielder who could bypass their on-rushing players. They just rushed everything. As soon as we had the ball, they were on us. And a midfielder as clever as Tom O'Connor, who can switch the play as easily as Tom O'Connor at the base, would have got us moving in the right direction and given them something to think about. I think he is that good.
Quite a small midfield as well, wasn't it? They were physically dominated, and Tom O'Connor, he's not the biggest bloke in the world, but he's bigger than those 3 midfielders. I feel like he would offer us some presence in the middle. Tim, any thoughts on the strike partnership? I think it's hard to judge, isn't it? In a first 50 minutes when the team was basically dominated, but it didn't really work yesterday, did it?
No, if you bookend it as whatever it was, 98-minute thing, it was a failed experiment, really, by Parky. It didn't quite work. For my money, I still think you look at Palmer and Dolby as maybe a starter for them too. I don't know, but he's obviously, I'm guessing Waters has trained hard and Parky's seen enough of him in the States to go, yeah, we'll give him a go in the absence of the main man. But I don't know. It just didn't work. It just didn't work. They didn't get a great deal of service.
Bickerstaff was good when he came on.
Yeah, he sort of showed some promise, didn't he? And it shows why. I think was it Parky said think we said it before that last year he feels that he's the best finisher at the club, which is quite some praise. Whether he gets, it'll be interesting. It'll be quite interesting to see if he gets a start against Wigan.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it, to be honest. Let's chuck him into the deep end. He's going to have to chuck these players, and he said in his interview, didn't he, Patty, that they didn't quite get as many minutes into some of the players as you would have liked on the trip in the States. So that this game was always earmarked as one of those exercises where he's prepared to do that. So we're expecting to see Lainton, we're expecting to see Jordan Davis start, we're expecting to potentially see Bickerstaff.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be all changes for Wigan. I think Parky intimated that in his post-match interview. He also suggested something else. There was quite a clear, are we calling it a whinge? Are we calling it that he was taking a dig at maybe the pre-season tour? Because he was basically saying that it's had a big impact, which surely you should be starting the season saying we've had a great pre-season and we're ready to go, not making excuses about the first game of the season based on a poor pre-season. Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that was the reason why we lost. I think probably the starting 11 had something more to do with it for me, but I can see the argument about the scheduling of the pre-season tour, because I think a situation where you come back from a big US jaunt 1 week before the season starts is less than ideal. If it was brought forward a little bit, maybe a week or so on home soil, play a League 2 side or, League 1 side, something like that. So just so that we've got something against a team that's a bit more like what we're actually going to be playing. So I don't know about anyone else, but I didn't look at the teams we played over in the US and think, oh, well, that's a good test of what we're actually going to face this season.
I've tried to look at this. I mean, if nobody last season had any major complaints about the pre-season, even though that was a bit of a mess in terms of how it was organised and everything else. I don't think it really matters who we played in pre-season. I think it was all about getting fitness and stuff, which you had. I suppose the big bugbear for me was the scheduling of it all, as Parky's alluded to. And am I right in thinking Foster arrived back 72 hours after everybody else? He come back on Wednesday, apparently.
Yeah, he was at the All-Stars game. I mean, he's obviously, they obviously wanted him there and thought it would be nice to get a face like that there. But, again,
that's at the detriment of us, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It's easy for us to say that now based on yesterday's performance. But if he gets back Wednesday, I don't know what time, there's a bit of jet lag. I'm assuming he was excused from training on Thursday. So does he come into the game a little bit
undercooked?
Yeah.
Well, there was a chap at the in the Wrexham Lager stand yesterday saying, he does a fair bit of work out in the States, and he says it takes him at least a week when he's been working at the States before he feels sort of well rested, because it just take time to get back into things. And he's not a professional athlete. When you Andy, how have you been this week?
I've not been sleeping. I've been sleeping weirdly. I've been going to bed early, thinking I've slept for hours, looking at it, and it's 11:30. Then I'm up for a little bit, and then I sleep for a little bit. Then it's 4 a.m. Then I'm still up for a little bit. And then I have another sleep. It's like three separate sleeps. Only last night did I really do it in one, and even then I got up at 6 rather than 4. But it is slightly different.
Who was the main organizer of the US tour, Andy? Do you know?
Who was the main organizer?
Yeah, I don't know. I've just.
There was a woman coordinator, wasn't there? They mentioned that they said they just classed her as the lady that's coordinating the trip. I don't know what it was.
I think as well. I was just joking, by the way, but I think it. There was quite a few early starts for them as well, wasn't there? Flying cross country. It's not like they flew for the States for 3 weeks or for 2 weeks and were just there in one spot. They were all over the place, weren't they? But still, we can talk about that all day. Let's move on to some thank yous. Tim, for an event last week.
Yeah, we did the first live event at the Mice Gwyn on Thursday, and 40 hours for the season kicked off, and we weren't really sure what to expect, and obviously we managed to sell it out in good time, which was amazing. And kind of exceeded all our expectations, really. It was really well attended. Thanks to Kev from the Rocking Chair and the staff at the Mice Gwyn for helping serve the food and the drinks behind the bar, and to Paris from Mice Gwyn for really helping kind of almost floor manage. Simon Cook as well. He helped kind of curate it, as somebody said. Obviously, our guests, Wayne Phillips-Gazzo and Paul Rutherford, Neil Ashton and Neil Roberts, they were all fantastic. And we had the Declan Swans as well, Scoot and Jonesy, who were brilliant. And it was just a really good all-round night. You know, loads of good prizes, loads of stall holders came along. They enjoyed it. They said it was a good like networking event for them. So yeah, thanks to all them guys as well. It was just the main thanks for all of us here was to everybody who came and made it what it was, really, because we were all a little bit not nervous. I think that kind of dissipated quite quickly, but a little bit apprehensive because we kind of didn't know how it was going to go. And I think bar a few little microphone mishaps, it kind of passed off without a hitch. And Simon Cook recorded a lot of it. You can go and visit the first part on his blog now. Gonna have a look for it. And yeah, it was just great. And hopefully that'll be the first of something beautiful regarding that.
Did you agree on a name?
No.
I'm going with Eisteddfod.
Yes, Eisteddfod was good. I thought it was quite good, and then I think Andy wasn't too enamored by
fine
it.
with that.
Andy hates
fine with Eisteddfod. Can we get some clog dancing in if it's going to be an Eisteddfod? Reece, when you're here, you have to do some disco dancing and then pop the clogs on, mate.
Bit of dance Guerin, is it? Bit of folk dancing. Yeah, I'll think about it. That was one of the few things I didn't do at Eisteddfod's, actually, so I'll come and sing instead. Speaking of substandard audio equipment at Mice Gwyn, owned by the Rich Watkin, not saying anything, but the Fat Boar this week, fantastic mural on the side of the building, but there's been something of a row that's come up, hasn't it? Andy, can you fill us in?
I probably don't know as much as Tim, but basically,
Tim, fill us in then.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the one who's going to get a season ticket banned. Great. Yeah, I mean, it's relatively common knowledge that it would appear that the club seems to have taken umbrage with the possibility of the mural of Liam Stokes-Massey put on the side of the Fat Boar, having use of the current club crest, which we're all adorning, by the way, most of us, apart from Liam. There's one, there's two, there's three, the Reese has got one on the wall. So, you know, time was against them anyway. Time frame was short. Something to do with like an intellectual property and a sort of due diligence and a due process. Please ask for permission and so on and so forth, is my understanding. So they've changed it to the old crest, old sort of council coat of arms from way back when. It's still been wonderfully received. Paul Mullin loves it. Everybody has been having loads of selfies with it. I think the big bone of contention for a lot of people who've seen it is that it just feels a little bit like the big man stepping on the little man business heads, because, you know, the Fat Boar have done a lot for the club over the years. They've employed wives and girlfriends of players to help the players and their families settle into the area. They sponsor the back of the season tickets. There is an awful lot of other club badges that have popped up all over town, a lot of businesses, and a lot of, you know, fellow watering holes. So I suppose the big thing is, are they being singled out? And if they're not, then surely you have to be consistent in your approach to all the others as well.
I don't think they're being singled out. Look, I've got a little bit of sympathy for the club when it comes to intellectual property like this.
Yeah,
right?
I get why they want to protect it,
Yeah,
but
no, I do.
Looking at it, it feels like a bit of an own goal because it's drawn attention to it.
Yeah, totally. And basically what I see, I completely understand the club not wanting hooky gear with the Wrexham. I mean, I'm saying hooky gear. I actually got this as a reproduction. This is probably the hookiest gear.
You tell everybody you got it off Dixie.
But, you know, I understand, like, just putting a Wrexham badge on everything, selling it, making money. I understand that. I completely get it, right? And I understand why they will absolutely be eagle-eyed on who is using the badge and for what purposes. Right. So is Rich using that badge to make money? I don't think so. I think he's using it as another Wrexham talking point in the town. So you've got, you know, you've got a well-trodden path there, right? You go to the ground, you go to the turf, you go to the Wrexham Museum, you go and have a photo taken next to that mural. It just becomes part of the tour. So you know, the modus operandi for this venture from Rob and Ryan and whoever said was like, we want to help the community. Okay, so you can help the community by letting them something like that use the official club badge. Now, the last thing I want to say about it is, look, I can understand why you would want, the club would say, ask our permission, and that's fair enough. But how many times?
And we don't know what the outcome of that was. They may well have said, "Can we have permission?" They say, "Yeah, of course." So we don't actually know.
Yeah, totally.
All they can't have done, because otherwise they'd have done the badge.
Yeah. Well, which is what
I've probably gone. Thank you for asking. We'll consider it over the next 6 months.
It was quite ironic, though. Apparently, the image.
Andy, finish it. Sorry, I've interrupted. Liam, you go next. Andy, finish your thought.
All I want to say is, I can understand, right? The club say, right, come and ask us. We'll discuss it, right? But what you need then, you need a hotline into the club, and it's either someone answering a phone, which they don't, or someone answering an email, which they don't. And that's if you can know that you've got a hotline in there where you can say, I want to do this, it will be great for the community. Can we use the badge? And then you can get a decision pretty quickly. I'm sure everyone would use it. I just don't think there is that entry into the club at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm just going to see if I can get a copyright strike for our video just by doing that there, just to check if it works.
Yeah. Liam, what are your thoughts?
You know me, I'm the moaning arsehole. So I think that it is a bit of overreach by the club, and I don't think it's the first time, even this week, that it's happened. Really, I've heard one or two other stories. Probably one that's not mine to tell, but another that's on Facebook quite publicly, where a local councillor got called into the club and told off for selling on a match-worn shirt from last season that he won fair and square in a raffle. Essentially, he was selling it on eBay to raise money for someone to come over from Patagonia to watch a game, and he basically got told that his behaviour was disgraceful. He said, or words to that effect. So I just thought that was a bit bizarre. Surely, once you win a raffle,
why would it be disgraceful?
I don't know. It's apparently
is it making money off? Is it making money off some sort of club merchandise?
But it's a charity, and he's not a scalper, is he?
Did he say it was a charity on? I thought there was a grey area on whether he said it was a charity in the original post. Anyway, I don't even know if that makes a difference.
He won the raffle via a charity raffle. So the charity has made money. He's then gone to sell it on to basically fund a fan from Patagonia, to come over to watch a game. Essentially, I think he made that pretty clear. It's all a bit strange, but it's.
But back to the mural. I mean, okay, Liam. Then, do you understand? Do you think that the club should be able to stop people from using the badge if they're going to, monetize it?
There's a couple of things there. So my understanding is the club can't actually copyright the whole badge because the feathers is obviously not their property. So that's one element to it. I think it was.
Let's get rid of the feathers then. That answers that. Get rid of the feathers.
Yeah. The other element to it is, I think you can basically. I think I probably ought to give credit to Rob Taylor from Wrexham.com, otherwise he'll cry. But he was basically saying that there's ways around it whereby you can offer a community license to businesses, local businesses like the Fat Boar, and say you can use this for a nominal sum, basically like £1 or something like that, and it basically avoids the whole, basically taking it out on people who aren't really trying to do the club over, I guess is what I'm saying. So there's ways and means around it without being overly protective, if that makes sense. So yeah, I can understand in terms of things like hooky shirts, dodgy merch, people using it without permission, etc. But like Andy said, it's also is artwork a bit different as well. I made the very spurious point that they could ask everyone who's got it tattooed on their bodies to get it lasered off, but that was just me being very flippant. So I will hold my hands up to that.
Also, that this isn't like it's just some sort of franchise business that's moved in the air and said, like, let's whack a mural on the side of it. This is a business that's got a rich Wrexham tapestry to it. We've got an ex-player scored one of the most famous goals for Wrexham Football Club, Barry Horn. We've got ex-chief exec and Don Bircham. We've got very well-known Fine and Rich. So there's that aspect. Plus, it also has to be mentioned that Paul Mullin's autism charity is on there as well. So there is more than one element to it. We're trying to bring attention to the autism aspect and the charity aspect. So yeah, look, I think it's important to state that we are all for right of reply. So if Sean, Fleur, Julie, or anybody wants to come on and set the record straight or put their case forward, then feel free to.
There's always an open offer for those people to come on the podcast. We'd love to have them on.
And I think Tim's right there. I think we are working a little blind on this at the moment because we don't know the full story from both sides. So we can only give our view on what we know.
Yeah, indeed. Let's move on. There was also a new signing this week back on the pitch. James McClean. Andy, thoughts? Good signing?
Sorry, you caught me on mute there.
Are you working?
I'm always working, mate. I'm always on the clock.
I thought you were going to do a silent protest then.
No. McClean, I was a little bit surprised. I was surprised we paid money for a 34-year-old. I did wonder where he would play. I was thinking, is he a left wing back? Because we could need competition there. Or I'm thinking maybe he would slot in the left-hand side of midfield. So originally I sort of thought, he comes with a little bit baggage as well. But I'm not afraid of that. The guy's at least principled. So I scratched my head at first, but then I saw yesterday. What do you need? You need a guy who won't be bullied somewhere on the pitch, someone who leads by example. And I think from whatever ex-pros say about McClean, and I talked to Mickey Thomas about him on Saturday, he does that. He is that player. He is 110%. I talked to my mate who's an Irish football expert. Says everyone loves McClean because he leaves it all out there. He might get a few yellow cards. He might even get a red every now and again. But that guy will not back down, and he will take other people with him. And if we had McClean on the pitch yesterday, maybe we could have scored a few of those other chances we had, and maybe he could make a difference. And it goes back to, do we want to be spending money on 34-year-olds? I don't care if we're spending money on 34-year-olds if they actually do what we asked them to do, and in this case it's to help us out of League Two. And if he does that in a season or 2 seasons, he's worth it.
Liam, good signing.
Yeah, got to be happy with a player who's played 46 games in the Championship last season, Wigan's Player of the Season, albeit in one where they got relegated, but their fans really seem to rate him, so I don't see how it can be a bad signing at all. I know there was the usual political discussion around it, but I'm not really interested in that side of things. If he does well for Wrexham, that's all I want. I do think we'll probably see him play left wing back. It sounds like he can play left back or left wing back. There were just a couple of points that our good friend Wonderboy has dropped in with me about that signing. He says that the fee of £250,000, which has been quoted everywhere, was actually a lot less than that. And also the talk of him being on Championship wages. According to Wonderboy, he says it's somewhere more in the region of 5 to 7k per week. So you're not looking at breaking the wage structure to sign him. If that's the case, then it's just it makes perfect sense as a signing from that perspective as well.
Yeah, perhaps we'll see him on Tuesday. Who knows, playing a left wing back. Let's move on quickly because we've been talking for ages and we've got. Can we
just say that it is James McClean, not McClean?
That's my fault. Sorry, James McClean.
Just like it's Max Clueworth, not Clayworth. It's McClean, not McClean.
McClean, not McClean. You mean
McClean, not McClean? Yeah, I got myself tongue-tied.
I'm trying to be smart. I had.
Right. Yeah, I should.
Yeah, exactly,
let's hurry up because we've got a really good interview coming up and we need to hurry up. Really quickly, transfer gossip. Liam, do you have anything for us?
I do indeed. I would ask Andy to play the music, but I fear that would delay proceedings.
No, let's move on. We've got time, Andy.
Oh God. Yeah. So Wonderboy, who may or may not have been in the crowd at the event the other night, has done quite a lot of digging for us. So we've got a few things. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But so according to him, midfielder Matty Virtue has agreed to join us, but Blackpool are dragging their. Is he playing that song, for Christ's sake? You can barely audible as well. So yeah, Matty Virtue has agreed to join us, but Blackpool are dragging their heels. Paul Parky has been meeting up with a player who would be a huge signing if it comes around, which is very, very cryptic, but I like that. And apparently, so Harrogate striker Luke Armstrong did not play for them yesterday after saying that basically his head wasn't in it because he's had a few bids in for him. We are one of those which has made a bid, according to Wonderboy. So that could be quite interesting in terms of the striker situation. And just one more bit I'll pick out of this because it's quite comprehensive. Apparently Stoke have also been sniffing for Aaron Hayden, which would be quite interesting given the events of the weekend. So yeah.
Yes, that is one of the most interesting. I like to move it segments we've had in a while. So thanks for that, Liam and Wonderboy. Right, let's move on. We've got a big interview for you this week. It's actually one that we conducted ages ago, but we haven't found the right time to do it. What with a few of us being away and with other guests being available to discuss current events. So now we feel like we've got a great slot. We didn't want to waste it. So next 2 weeks, we're going to have part 1 and part 2 of, I think it's fair to call him a Wrexham legend, certainly a modern Wrexham legend. So please enjoy this interview with Mr. Shaun Pearson.
Our next guest became so popular in his 4 years at Wrexham that he was honoured with his own appreciation day. Signed by D. Keates in May 2017, this no-nonsense centre-back made 138 appearances, scoring 12 goals, 6 of which somehow made him the Reds' top scorer in the 2018-19 season. Leader of men, he captained the club with distinction, delivering for the people of Wrexham both on and off the pitch, but we'll come to that a bit later on. Many Wrexham fans were gutted to see him return to Grimsby, a club he would help win promotion to League Two for a second time, but the blood, sweat and tears he gave to Wrexham will live long in the memory. Upon announcing his retirement from playing, he was branded one of the best by Ryan Reynolds, and we couldn't agree more. Welcome to the podcast. Shaun Pearson, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Was that good enough or short?
That was very generous, I think.
Happy days. So it's great to finally have you on. We'll get to the sort of point of you retiring later down the track, but before we get into your time at Wrexham from the off, let's do a few warm-ups just to get you into the flow of it, just to get you into the mood of what's going on. So first things first, best manager you've ever worked under. Is it Dean Keates, Paul Hurst, or Rich Watkin?
That's got to be Richie Watkin, hasn't it?
Are you just saying that because he's here?
I think.
What a great question!
He was
Absolutely amazing question.
Definitely the least organised manager I worked under.
Rich, you got right to reply on that one.
Yeah, he's done me straight. Like literally 1 minute into the pod, and he's already hammering me. This is exactly why I didn't want to come on.
Well, you're in now. She might as well fight the good fight. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There were good times. Well, not good times in general life, but I did. I enjoyed them times with Rich.
Happy days. So, in terms of, let's go to the fairly immediate past, when Grimsby beat Wrexham 5-4 in that playoff eliminator, which we can kind of look back on with a little bit of, not fondness, Andy's shaking his head, but maybe it give us the kick up the arse we needed. I don't know. But I remember texting you and you messaged back. So just tell us how you felt at that time, because you were delighted for Grimsby, but I think there's a little element of a little bit of mixed emotions there from you.
Yeah, 100% mixed emotions. I just obviously 100%. You're in the game, you want to win. There was no feeling during the game as such. It was just at the end of the game, I knew got to know a lot of people really, really well in that 4 years at Wrexham, and lived and breathed it alongside people, and knew how much it meant to them. And then not only that, Youngie, who has become really one of my best friends in football and outside of football really now, I knew what he'd put into it, what it meant to him. And then someone like Jordan Davis, for example, who's a little bit of a different relationship, but actually really close relationship, maybe a little bit like an older sibling type thing. Felt like I'd really helped him in his first year. Just didn't feel it was the right moment for me to be dancing around and celebrating. And obviously, and to be fair, actually going back to the end of that season, not just the Wrexham game, the the Notts County game, the Solihull final. I remember sort of telling myself like I knew I wasn't going to have too much longer left playing, and how many more of these moments I was going to have. And like I look back to the promotion we had before at Grimsby, and I don't really remember a great deal of it. You get so carried away, so caught up in the emotion. This time I sort of said to myself, with each of them big wins that we had, try and absorb it and take it in a little bit more. So it was, just tried to for me to be able to remember them moments. And obviously, fortunately for us, it was magical the whole way through, and we managed to go on and get promoted. So just tried to take them in. And like I say, having people so close to you, like I finished the game, and I think initially Max broke the Grimsby goal. He jumped on me, and then the next couple of people I saw were Youngie and George. So the last thing I was going to do is obviously rub it in their face or anything like that. Obviously now it's much easier to talk to them about it because they've obviously got promoted themselves. So it makes it much easier and much sweeter. My wife's decided to start making a cup of tea now, just as we started, if you can hear noise in the background.
Hello, Clarice. Hope you're well.
We're all saying hello. Hope you're well.
Are you getting one, Shaun? That's the question.
I definitely won't get one.
I don't know about this question, but why do you like being called Greg?
Who's that? That can only be Scott Bowden. That's put that across or Dean Keates.
Right. Can I? So before we sort of did these questions, I've talked to one ex-teammate in particular. I wonder if you can guess who it is by the end of it. I think you'll be able to.
I'll be fascinated to see. Greg just come from Scott Bowden. Just one. I think it was the first pre-season game at one of the local clubs we played against, and I don't think he actually played. It was the day he signed. He just turned up and he was like, he asked Jack McCarthy, he was like, "Who's captain, Greg?" And then it just stuck like the worst story ever, really. But the gaffer Dean Keates got onto it at the time, and he decided to put it. We had like obviously our pods for our GPS, and he put Greg on there rather than Shaun, and then that was it. It just stuck forever with that group of lads, really.
Great stuff.
Shaun, can I just say that Greg Edward Pearson was born in Birmingham, started his career at West Ham, went to Rushden and Diamonds, Bishop Stortford, Burton Albion, Grimsby Town, and finished at Nuneaton.
Wow, Grimsby Town as well. West Ham, I think I wish I'd have had that one CV.
Final warm-up question before we get into it. Has Richard Brodie's penalty landed yet? And if it has, where did it land?
Rhodes, yeah, that penalty all. Then again, I was the one that gave the penalty away in the last couple of minutes to take that game to extra time. Oh yeah, that was a painful moment. Obviously not for yourselves that day, obviously the other way around. But it wasn't the best of penalties, was it?
Did you ever find out if Richard Brodie genuinely hated Wrexham? Because as the years went by, we'd cross swords with him at like Southport and we always had banter with him. Sometimes
Richard Brodie was a funny character. Actually, on a day-to-day basis, was quite likable. Really, he was. I've just genuinely never played with anybody that was hated. Basically, at every other club we went to, like honestly, it was. And he just. It didn't. Well, I say it didn't affect him. I'm not sure if it was good for him or not, to be honest with you. But he didn't shy away from it. Let's put it that way. I remember, like we were going to Cambridge, like and we Grimsby Cambridge. There was no real rivalry. We was up the top one year, so a little bit, but like. And they hated him, and just pretty much everywhere we went, he was hated. But actually, he was an all right guy, really. Deep down, he was quite soft deep down and quite a nice guy. But yeah, funny.
Do you know what he's up to now? I'm curious. I'd love to know.
I think he's a manager. He's either a manager or an assistant manager down the pyramid, maybe at like step 4 or something like that. I'm sure. I've seen it somewhere or involved in some respect on the coaching side. I've got a feeling he's a manager. I'm sure I've seen it somewhere this summer. Can't remember exactly where.
Wow, there we are.
So which really surprised me when I saw it, if I'm totally honest. But fair play to him.
So let's go to your arrival at Wrexham. Obviously, Dean Keates signed you. We were all overjoyed because hang on, we've got a really solid player that comes with some sort of pedigree, you know. So how did that come about? Were you friends with Dean prior to that? Obviously you give the penalty away in the trophy final against him, so Where did it all stem from? Your kind of
which let me just tell you first, he never ever let a day go by in the time he was manager at Wrexham and I played for him and not bring that up. Like, it was every day, constant. No, my best mate James McEwen, Grimsby the goalkeeper, who was obviously fantastic in that final. He was really good friends with Dean Keates, and I was out the team in the season before I signed at Grimsby for a brief period, and I was going to be out of contract in the summer. We changed manager, didn't really know what was going to happen. Marcus Bignett had just come in, and Macra had just mentioned it to Keates, saying, like, obviously there's don't know what's happening with Shaun, but it basically recommended me to him. So the first contact was probably either December, January time, can't remember exactly when, but roughly around then. But literally as he rang me about a loan, it was more a loan for the second half of that season, Marcus Bignett put me in the team and made me captain. Basically, I ended up playing. So obviously that it sort of went quiet really. Then Marcus Bignett got sacked towards the end of that season. Russell Slade come in. I actually played. I think he had 5 games as manager. I think I played the last 4 of them. And then Dean was on to me. And then obviously it became apparent that Grimsby weren't going to offer me a new deal. And then it just went from there, really. It didn't take too long, really. There was just a couple of other offers. One was Barrow at the time, who were actually offering really good money, much better than what Wrexham offered at the time. So it was just a case of negotiating. I was negotiating. Obviously, I wanted to come to Wrexham. Obviously, I couldn't give away that too much to Dean, because obviously I was trying to negotiate to get the best deal I could out of him. I think, to be fair, Barrow offered me a substantially better deal. But as in terms of, and this is nothing against Barrow, nothing disrespectful, as in terms of just history, size of club, everything like that, it just made sense, really. Wrexham was the one we decided to go.
You settled in fairly quickly, I'd say. And in that first season, there was a lot of clean sheets, which as a defender is like the greatest thing for you. How did... What was the partnership like? I think sort of Manny Smith, wasn't it, as well? I mean, how did you and him complement each other's game? Because like Manny was like the silent assassin.
Yeah, sometimes you just click with people. Like our personality, we roomed together. Personalities clicked, very different personalities, but clicked. Got on really, really well. A really, really top guy and a top defender, really. And it was fascinating because I think in general, I've talked about this a little bit, is in terms of sometimes people have perceptions, and the natural perception of me and Manny was like I was the head at kick it, he was a bit quicker and calmer on the ball. But and I'm sure Manny was saying this, actually a lot of teams would have tried to kick onto Manny in general because they had this vision of me being the aerially dominant one. But actually Manny was probably just as good as me aerially, so we never really were vulnerable in that sense. He was obviously much quicker than me, which helped me a lot at times. And I like to think I helped him in terms of he was probably a little bit too laid back at times, as in terms of leading the line and things like that. But it was it was a partnership. It was a special partnership. So probably, I'm not saying he's the best centre-half I've played with, because I've played with some that have probably gone on to better things, but definitely probably the one I enjoyed playing with the most, as in terms of we just hit it off and just perfectly complemented each other, really. And it was just a shame how that season ended, because actually that group of lads were a really, really good group of people, and just unfortunately probably didn't have quite enough quality to get where we wanted to get to at the end.
Speaking of a lack of quality, I don't know whether that's unfair. It's a loaded question already, but tell us a little bit about James Hurst, because
Hurst, he didn't lack quality. That was one thing he didn't lack.
Did he lack application?
He's an interesting character is probably the best way to describe him. I remember potential-wise out of that group, who's probably actually had the best potential to get back, further up the ladder. He was athletic. If he got himself fit and in proper shape athletically, he was probably as good as anybody we had. He had good ability on the ball, strong, unbelievably tough in a tackle, good in the air. Like, he actually had all the attributes. But I think he was just maybe one of them where football he'd obviously started higher up, think sometimes football can sort of chew people up and spit them out, and it's quite a ruthless world. And sometimes people then find it difficult to find a place down the ladder, so to speak. And I think maybe he's done some silly things at times. I think which have been obviously come quite public in Wrexham and stuff like that. But ability-wise, we really could have done with him just applying himself a little bit more. He just had difficulty. And I always remember one day training, Dean Keates put me on his team. Gaffer speaks to me. He's like, "Look, you're on his team. I want you to basically get onto him. Like, was on at me to try and get on that." Generally, I had a good relationship with all the players as the captain. We're doing these games. If your team lost, you had to run, basically. So, like, we keep losing, and his application is dreadful. And, like, I start screaming and shouting at him, and he just says that. He's like, he basically is just like, "You're not getting any more out of me. This is all you're getting." He's like, he said, what was his word? Something like, "Who do you think we are? We're playing League 5 or something like that." He's like, and it was like, I was just like, I looked at the gaffer and I'm just like, what more do you want me to do and I had a conversation with him one day, and he just said to me, he said he really, this was James Hurst, just said he really struggled some days. I think he had, maybe, I don't know if mental health problems is the right word, but he said to me, some days I come in and I've got it and I feel like it's there, and some days I just really struggle with that motivation. And in football, that becomes so much more apparent. In other jobs, you sort of get away with that on some day-to-day basis. Like, you turn up at Tesco's, for example, if you're not really feeling it, you can sort of get away with not, you do your little bits or whatever. Nobody's really going to notice too much difference, I don't think. But obviously in a football environment, it was very different.
Does that must tell you a lot about you as a leader in that dressing room, that somebody like James Hurst can come in and trust you with that information? Because we know what it's like. We're still fighting against that stigma now of men talking about issues, blah, blah, blah. So when James Hurst comes to you and says, "Sometimes I've got it and sometimes I'm just not sure about it," I mean, that you must have felt quite to be entrusted with that information.
Quite possibly. Yeah, at the time I didn't really overly think too much of it. You sort of, I would say I've always, even when I was younger, more so definitely when I've got older, become like, even when I've not been captain, almost like a senior figure, as in terms of, I like to think I make it apparent that people can talk to me as in terms of whatever they think it may be, and being able to sort of adjust to different characters. Something I learned, I've just started my A license. Something we learned on there is actually and I think I've done this pretty well in my life without actually thinking about it. And obviously when I went on my A license, I got taught about it, is actually to separate, sometimes because a certain person behaves in a certain way, we actually stick that to them, where actually we have to separate that behaviour from the person, if you see what I mean. Sometimes there might be reasons why certain things, and I'm not saying that means we accept certain things. Like with James Hurst, we tried our best to get the best out of him. For whatever reason, we couldn't do it. But yeah, definitely as a captain, I like to think as a captain, or even just in the dressing room in general, I like to think I've always made myself somebody that can be trusted and try and help people as much as I can.
Okay, so let's go back to Dean Keates. Could you see it being pretty obvious that he was leaving when they came calling? It was Walsall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you feel that? I mean, we spoke to him, and I'm pretty sure, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but he kind of agonised a fair bit, but then just thought he's got to go because it might not arise again. What was your initial thought process around that? Did you sense he was going? Did he have any conversations with you as to what decision he'd made?
I'll be totally honest, I can't remember that well, to be totally honest with you. I remember him calling me to say he was going to go, and as much as I would love to have stayed, that's football. Like, it happens, and that can happen at any point, at any club type thing, The bit I found difficult with the club at that time was I felt as though because he went, it almost just deflated everything. Like, the club had been on hard times, struggle. Obviously, we're doing quite well, and when we're doing well, it gets ripped away. So, like, it almost like people are just like, "Oh, it's happening again," and that was something I struggled with. And I remember we beat Maidstone, and I really celebrated after the game. Like, in terms of, and I was saying to the lads, like, I was almost trying to, like, you could feel it as in terms of, not that anybody had given up, but almost it was like, oh, it's going to happen to us again. And I'm like thinking, no, come on, like, we need, like, there has to be more fight. And I don't mean within the players. And I remember going around the players, like, saying, come on, like, just G them up, like, G the crowd up, try and get it. But it never works. I'm not sure we won another game after that. But I remember the feeling at the club at the time and just thinking something went missing 100% in them last games, as though, like, not that it was acceptable, but like there was an excuse all of a sudden. And as a football club, I would say it got itself in a position where almost definitely when I first come, and I remember having a chat with Dean Keates on having my first or second day training, talk about James Hurst. James Hurst smashed Leo Smith in training, and like Andy Davis stops it, and it was a great tackle. It was not, stops it, and I remember saying to Keates, like, that can't be stopped. Like that to me, I was used to, obviously Paul has trained under him a long time, so and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Now I look back, actually, there's loads of different ways you can do it, but obviously the way we'd had success was like that training was proper, like you had to have proper tackles, like it was full tilt, and I felt almost stopping it in that moment, you're taking that edge away from it a little bit. And I think in them first couple of years, Dean definitely started it off probably before I joined, but it was getting stronger. And then when he left, it just sort of crumbled a little bit, and that was a shame that happened. Because, like I say, but and maybe a little bit also, we rode our luck that time in the season at times that year. We were, if you look at that group of players, some really, really good people, like I said before, but probably actually lacked the real quality to be in the top 2 or 3 at the end of it. And I think it maybe just caught up with us a little bit as in terms of towards the end of that season.
Do you think if Dean had stayed, he would have gone up?
We'd have had a chance. I think we'd have got in the playoffs. I don't think we weren't a good enough team to win the league. I don't think. But then that year it wasn't like really. Macclesfield ended up going clear, but actually for a long time that season there wasn't really anybody clear at the top. It was quite open for quite a while. I think we were top at one point in definitely February. I think we won it away at Guiseley or somewhere like that and went top. And so we were still in around it. But I don't think we'd have had enough quality. But at the same time, once you get in them playoffs, anything can happen. Like as I've learned over the years, basically.
Did that put Andy Davis in a bit of a difficult position? Because I suppose the thinking from the powers that be thought, well, continuity. Dean's gone. We'll stick his number 2 in charge, and that will be seamless. But didn't quite happen. So I know you've alluded to it already about maybe just not having enough quality to go up. So I suppose looking at it, was there any blame? Was it a player thing? Was it a management? Was it just Dean going? Was it a collective effort of that it just didn't quite happen?
I think a little bit the season caught up with us, like I said. I look at it, Scott Quigley obviously arrived in January, started like a house on fire. His form falling away really killed us as well, because without his goals, Chris Elroyd obviously got a few. But in the second half of the season, without Quiggs' goals, we didn't really have a great goal source. So that what caused his drop in form, I'm not so sure. Lack of confidence, he was struggling with an injury towards the end, which didn't help 100%. But I think, like I said, I just think the club as a whole, a little bit like it was, oh, it's happening to us again. And I think you could feel that around the place, as in terms of like, so then that has a knock-on effect to the players. And looking back, at the time, I thought it was the right thing to leave Andy in charge. Looking back now, whether Andy knew he was going to go straight away or not, I'm not sure. If the club did know that, looking back, they probably should have let the staff that were going to go straight away and change it. But that's easy to say that in hindsight. Nobody knew, obviously, how it was going to play out.
Before I hand over to Andy, Rich, you got anything from that first season you want to level at Shaun?
No, I'll be honest. It always makes incredible listening, I think, when you hear back from the people who are in the camp, because as fans, we've all got our own viewpoints of why things is happening. And James Hurst was always the one. I always remember when myself and Shaun spent a bit of time together. James Hurst was always the name, which it was like, he's the one. Like, I'd always say, Shaun, bloody hell, what an idiot that man must be, and stuff like that. And Shaun would always come back, like I say, like, his talent is right up there. So when he was saying the stories about James is. That's what I always remember. That was the information I was given, that this guy actually could have been a serious player, and it was just unfortunate that things off the pitch transpired, which meant he couldn't do it for us. But I think I always remember. I think was that the season we played Chester? And I remember thinking before the Chester game that he was the guy I really wanted to play, because I think he'd come on off the bench the game before, and we were away at Chester. And I remember thinking, if he plays, if we get him right, we've got a hell of a player here. And I guess that's life and that's sport, isn't it?
You've just reminded me actually to insert that question about Chester, because I knew there was something I was missing.
Yeah, I've set him up there.
It was, yeah. It might have been Chester away in that.
He didn't score many goals, but let's talk about what he did.
Yellow and red Baywatch kit, live on BT Sport, I think it was.
BT Sport, yeah.
I can play it. I've got it lined up here.
Oh, Andy's got it ready. Let's watch it, and then you can
talk about this before, Tim. We went through this.
I know, but
I wasn't part of that conversation.
I'll show you how excited I am by all this. Look at that!
Yeah. What a great, amazing marketing! Amazing marketing.
Right, I'm going to put this on now, boys. Right, let's enjoy this. But I mean, it went so well last time. It's not going to fuck up, is it? Right, hang on.
Oh,
can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah. Hit it.
Poor so far. The delivery's not been right. It's a massive area of the game when you're
who's out over the ball?
These
Max
become
Kelly.
important, and both sides are
really
delivery.
Left foot.
Underrated kit, that,
Let's see if Wrexham can improve it here. Better from Kelly. Oh, and it's in. Pearson celebrates.
I just remember celebrating after the game. Chris Doig, who's the assistant at Grimsby, texted me, and he'd come to watch a player. I can't remember who come to watch now, and he was sat right there, and he was like, "When have you ever been a knee slide celebration guy?"
I was going to say that was the knee slide of a man who didn't quite know what to do.
Yeah, I didn't have a clue what to do. That was a special night.
What a goal! Great day. How did you celebrate after? Because I remember there was the lads. I think it might have been Leo Smith. A few had loads of like flags that fans had chucked onto the pitch for.
I remember the gaffer Dean obviously said to us like, look, I think were the fans kept in maybe, or they just stayed in. I'm not 100% sure, but basically he said like, just let's enjoy it. He was trying to build that rapport all the time, trying to build momentum, things like that, and we started to get a bit of momentum because to be honest with you, that night we were absolutely dreadful. I remember watching the game back. I'm not sure we had another shot on target in the whole game. I'm not sure if we had another shot. We were so bad, but obviously managed to find a way to win the game. But yeah, I just remember him saying, obviously, try and build that rapport, embrace it, trying to build something. And obviously, a couple of lads, I think Rudds jumped in the crowd. Rudds loved it. Like, what a guy, by the way. I think, have you had him on already? Or
yeah, we've had him.
What a guy! Like
one of the most listened to pods we've had, I think, just because he's like...
top man. And yeah, so just. It was a really enjoyable evening. I always remember it as well because it'd been moved. It was meant to be on a Saturday originally. I think it'd been moved to either Friday or Thursday. Was it ended up being a Wednesday night maybe? And we didn't have a game for a little while afterwards. And Keates had said to the lads like basically was an incentive, like you win, you'll get Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So obviously, as bad as we were, we ended up winning, and he had to hold up his side of the bargain, obviously, and give the lads the few days off as a reward. So yeah, it was a good night, and I'd probably looking back now, you could say it's essentially the last time Wrexham are going to play Chester in a league game there. So it was.
It's hoping, yeah, absolutely, it's hoping.
It's realistically, it's probably not going to be happening anytime soon, is it?
Right, let's skip ahead to the second season. Interesting what you're saying about mentality, and maybe there was something in the Wrexham sort of psyche and in the staff, maybe the players, that sometimes losing was a default. I think the next guy who came in, I think he sort of wiped that away a little bit. It was Sam Ricketts. We've had him on. He's an impressive fellow when you talk to him. I know it didn't end well for him, but we'll get to that. What were your sort of initial impressions of him as he came in as a man and a boss?
I think he obviously got the job. He rang me and said he'd like to meet me. I was getting married that summer, and I don't do anything with my hair ever, as you probably noticed in the 4 years that represented. But I was getting married, so I thought, right, I've got to do something with my hair on my wedding day. So I actually went to a barber's and had a a trial basically of getting my hair done. So the first time I met him, my hair was all swept over and looking pristine, and I bet he was thinking, looking at, he's come well presented, and he'd never seen me like that again. But it was interesting really, because I wasn't 100% like, not that I didn't like him or anything, I wasn't sure how he'd get on when I first met him. The first couple of conversations, he made it pretty clear to me that he wanted me to stay. I had an offer, I think filed. Graham Barrow was the head of recruitment at Filed at the time, before obviously Sam brought him in as assistant. They'd literally just made a bid for me maybe the week before, something like that. Obviously we're paying good money at the time. I think he thought I'd heard about it, like they'd obviously maybe contacted me anyway, but it was completely out of the blue to me. And he just said, look, he wanted to stay. They rejected the bid. What were happening? I said to him, well, that's perfectly fine with me as long as you want me here. He said he wanted me to be captain, blah, blah, blah. And then it was just interesting getting to work with him. He was, in my opinion, he was really, really top draw. I've always spoke highly of him. The one thing I thought he may have struggled with, and I think Dean had already started working on it for the following season, was his targets of players. And I think he probably pinched a couple off. I think maybe I'm not sure exactly how it worked. Darlow maybe had the list, and obviously Darlow stayed. So maybe I'm not sure exactly how. But I remember him asking me, like, who would you say the best? He asked me the best three centre forwards. So he asked me and Manny Smith together the best three centre forwards we played against the previous season. Basically, who would you sign? I would have signed Andy Cook, which I think
we're never going to sign Andy Cook, mate.
No, I would have signed Andy Cook at the time. I said that he'd get at that level, absolute guaranteed goals, big handful, would have been perfect for us. I think the year before, under Dean, just before Christmas, I think it was probably the closest it ever come to happening. But obviously then Tranmere ended up putting him. I think us winning there 1-0 actually. Looking back in hindsight, if we'd have let the two strikers play and score a couple of goals, Cookie might not got back in, and maybe we'd have signed him. Who knows? But yeah, so Sam was just asked us like who the best strikers we played against. I can't remember exactly who the list was. I remember Manny Smith saying Danny Johnson, who's now he scored those goals for Walsall at the start of last season in League Two. Can't remember who else we said, but yeah, so he just asked us our opinions on things like that. So I think the one thing he could have struggled with was recruitment, not knowing the level really. But he managed to find a way of getting around that, if you see what I mean, and did that well. And he was a little bit fortunate with being able to get Rob Lainton in, who was obviously top draw. And I think it helped him getting Yussi, because at the time I don't think the club wanted to pay a great deal for a goalkeeping coach, and they got Yussi on a really, really cheap deal, I think. But Rob and Yussi were really close, and basically Rob said to Yussi that he'd come, but only if Yussi was going to be there every day. And Yussi was top guy, and I think he did a lot really for nothing in that year, as in terms of he was getting paid, but he was doing a lot of extra work that he wasn't getting paid for. So yeah, I think that was the one thing I'd have worried about with him, but he managed to find a way of working really well in that respect.
Yeah, you know what? You preempted my second question, because a lot's come in, but the one who's still there, I mean, the one who can probably play in League Two if he can stay clear of injuries, is Rob Lainton. Could you tell straight away, wow, this is a keeper?
Maybe not straight away, no. He'd obviously been injured. I remember I was injured. We played away at Telford in pre-season. I think we lost either 3 or 4-1. Akil Wright played centre half, and I always joke with Aki saying like, God knows how he could never play centre half again, and he's just played the whole season in League Two for Stockport at centre half and been absolutely fantastic. So it just shows you what I know, really. But and not that Rob was at fault as much, but watching it, I wouldn't have watched that game and thought Rob was going to be outstanding. But then once we got into the season, he just started like an absolute house on fire. And I get on really well with Rob still now, and I always say to him and joke to him like that. Obviously, the reason why he was so injury free that year was because he didn't have nothing to do with me in front of him. But no, he's top draw, and it's such a shame that he just can't stay injury free, because he's a really top keeper, especially at that level.
I want to talk about another injury, really. Manny got injured pretty early doors on that. Is that one? I mean, I was there at the game. I think it's away at Solihull. I looked at it and went, I'm not quite sure about that. But I didn't think it was anything really bad. I mean, did you look at it and go, oh, that's a bad one? And, is that the worst way for a pro career to end, which it more or less did for Manny after that?
Yeah, it was horrendous as in terms of what come after that. At the time, one thing, Manny didn't get injured, didn't go down, wasn't one. A few times I play acted a little bit trying to milk. I was like referees trying to milk things. He was never like that, so knew it was going to be serious.
You didn't, did you? Come on.
Knew it was going to be serious as in terms of his him going down. But at the time, I remember he sort of hobbled off. I think if I remember rightly, I don't think he was stretchered off.
No.
So then you're thinking like nothing too bad. And I think the initial thing after the game, I don't think he was in. I can't remember 100%, but I don't think he was in agony as such. And then obviously just never. I think he come back and played one game against Eastleigh at home. I think we won 2-0. He was absolutely outstanding. And such a, like I say, such a shame because again, for that level, a really talented player and a really great guy that didn't deserve to have his career ended that way, really.
Yeah. When Sam Ricketts asked you and Manny Smith which centre forwards were the best, was one of the answers Mike Fondop? Is he a wasted talent or a talented waster? And didn't he once perform some dentistry on you in the training pitch?
Mike is he's a funny character. I really like Mike. He's hard to describe. Like as in terms of as a player, like I wouldn't want to play against him. I'll be honest. Like because you just don't know what you're going to get, and that I think he tries his best in terms. I just remember them trying to get him fitter, and he was like in terms of long distance run, anything like that. He was so unfit, but like everything was sort of dramatized with him. Like he'd be running round, and he'd look like he was absolutely about to die, basically. And you're thinking, Mike, it's really not that bad. Like what you're doing, it's pretty simple, really. But he started like a house on fire, didn't he? And I personally would have used him more throughout the season, just because I felt we didn't have a goal threat, really, as in terms of consistent goal threat. But one thing he could do was sort of do something out of nothing. For all his frustrating bits, he was the one that could have been a match winner for us. So not necessarily that I would have started him every game or anything like that, but as the season wore on, especially second half of the season, I maybe would have used him off the bench a little bit more, just as in terms of he might have popped up with a moment of madness 3 or 4 times. And if you look back, I think we lost out on the title by 4 points in the end, even though we finished 4th. It was that tight at the top. 2 games, 2 of them 1-1 draws or 0-0 draws or whatever. If he'd have produced 2 moments of madness, that might have been enough for us to be the top team at the end of that season.
Yeah.
And going back to Sam quickly, this might preempt one of your other questions. I really believe if Sam would have stayed, we would have. I'm almost like certain. Well, you can't ever be certain of something, but I'd have been amazed if we hadn't got an extra 4 points if Sam would have stayed as manager, or 5 points, whatever it was.
No, I sort of agree with you there. You've got to tell us a little bit about the training, Gary. I mean, I'm looking at your teeth now, and they look absolutely superb. They absolutely blinded me.
They're turkey teeth, aren't they?
Mike Fondop didn't do them.
No, they got knocked out originally against Torquay when I was playing for Grimsby, and so the front 3 are all false. But they're on like a bridge, so they're connected. So we're training one day, ball gets hung up to the back stick. I think back now, like, why didn't I just knowing what Mike's like, why didn't I just let him head it, basically? I've gone to defend it. His elbow's just gone bosh, and he just knocked my teeth clean out. Well, I've jumped up like angry, like I'm fuming. And Rob Lainton, funny, Rob was great in this situation. So I jump up, I'm so angry, like wanting to fight him, basically. Rob holds me back, and then as things start to calm down, Rob's like, I held you back because I'm not sure I fancied your chances much there. and like looking back, I wouldn't have fancied the chances neither. But he was, but to be fair, Mike, he was like, at the time, he was like, basically like, what do you want me to do? Like, trying to score a goal. And he was right. Thankfully, the teeth got put back in at the dentist, and it wasn't too much of an issue. But yeah, it was a funny moment at the time. Well, not a funny moment for me at the time, but looking back, it was funny. My funny story about Mike was I always remember Mike asking me. He's obviously from Cameroon. I was the first player that's ever asked me, do you think the manager would give me a weekend off basically in the season to go back to Cameroon? And I was like, that's not going to happen, Mike. Like, there's no way. Like, no way in a million years. I think he ended up, did we lose in the cup, or did we either had a weekend off, or it might have been an FA Trophy weekend, and actually ended up meeting his family in Europe somewhere. But, I suppose I obviously laughed and joked and thought, like, that's crazy. But actually looking back, player from Cameroon in England doesn't get to see his family. Actually, probably it's tough, like, so. But yeah, I always remember him asking me and I was thinking, like, there's no chance that's happened.
Oh, fair play. He sounds a character. Shaun, I want to play you a little bit more of footage here, and you might have an idea of who the player feeding us all these lines are after this. All right, hang on.
I've got an idea already.
You see that?
He replaces Akil, he's being replaced by Akil Rice.
Oh, I should have edited this better.
Ball played through, chances for Gateshead, deny, chance here, another block from Pearson this time, towards goal, Lainton's there and it's in. Armstrong pulls one.
Right, so that was Gateshead, and the player in question said, he wants to, he said that after this, you both agreed that you were definitely at fault for that goal.
That I was at fault?
Yeah.
It's one of two. It's got to be, I'm guessing Geno is my guess.
No, it's Rubbers.
No, it is Rubbers.
Yeah.
I just, when Geno was there, then I was thinking, oh, maybe Geno. Rubbers, I can't remember. So I was at fault. It was a great block. Yeah. Oh, from the header and not covering round.
Yeah, he said you had a massive argument, probably the biggest argument he's had with a player.
I argued with everybody. The reason why I said Geno was because me and Geno get on so well now, even now. But the first 10 games me and James Jennings played together, I remember thinking there's no way we can play together because we were so like fiery. And then I can't remember the conversation or whatever, but eventually it clicked pretty quickly, and we just basically ganged up on everybody else together after that. But he was, me and Rhodes, I do remember having a big ding-dong with Rhodes. I had a few ding-dongs with different players at times, never in a bad way, just trying to get the best out of people. But yeah, I love Rhodes to bits. Like, he's so, just his passion, his drive and everything like that is fantastic.
It's obviously lasered onto his brain. Now, you've sort of said a little bit about it before, but your captain, it's history repeating itself again, isn't it? Because you get to a stage of the season where we're doing all right, and it looks again like the manager's going to leave. Did you see it coming as a captain? And there's not much more you can do as a captain, but maybe could the club done a little bit more to keep him?
I think I'm probably the only person that sort of got both sides at the time. I remember Spencer ringing me it would have been the Saturday morning. I didn't see it coming. I didn't think he'd go. I remember Spencer ringing me on the Saturday morning, basically saying Shrewsbury approached Sam. I can't remember the exact words, what was said, but basically the approach, Sam won't turn it down. So basically they banned him from coming to the game that night. So I thought, well, Sam obviously wants to go. That was my initial thought. I get off the phone to Spencer. 20 minutes later, Sam rings me and he's like, look, the club won't let me come to the game. Like, I want to be there, blah, blah, blah. And it was mental. Sam puts a message in the group with the players, basically wishing us luck. Something's going on. And looking back at it, I just think the club got stung the year before, obviously, with Dean going. I think when Shrewsbury made the approach for Sam and Sam wouldn't turn it down straight away, I think they felt it was probably an already done deal. I might be wrong here. I genuinely don't think it was. I think Sam wanted to get the game out of the way and then speak to Shrewsbury properly. And I still believe, I might be completely wrong, I believe if the club would have really thrown it at Sam like, we're desperate for you to stay, I think they were just, because of what had happened the previous year, they'd had the toes burnt once already, basically fingers burnt, and they didn't want it to happen again. So I think the backs to the walls, like it was easy just to sort of like, oh, we know what's going to happen. I think if they'd have put up a fight and said, look, we can do this. Sam was so demanding, and I think that was. I'm not sure the club, Dean had improved it and I think would have taken it to the next level the following season. Anyway, Sam Cumming did that, and he was so demanding of the club. He constantly would talk to me about what he wanted, how he wanted things done. There were so many things, and I think the club were, I think sometimes maybe a little bit scared, as in terms of they're maybe not quite used to it, as in terms of, I don't know if this is just because the level Sam had played at or whatever, but a little bit scared of committing everything to it and it not working out, which is understandable. But I think he just wanted so much. I think then when Shrewsbury coming, I think they probably maybe thought like, oh, he's so ambitious that it's almost probably just guaranteed he'll go. I'm not so sure. I remember speaking to him on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, and I still didn't. I was like in my head, I was thinking, well, he can't come back now because he's not done the game. But I remember thinking like, doesn't seem to me, when I spoke to him, it didn't seem to me like a guy that wanted to leave the club. But obviously it happened, and that's frustrating looking back. But it is what it is now, and just disappointing really, because I felt like we were on something. Obviously, I'd signed. The club then announced my new deal. I'd actually signed my new deal. Sam was the one that gave me my new deal. I'd signed it a couple of weeks before. They'd not announced it yet. They're obviously waiting to announce it. I think they were going to do a big thing for it. And then obviously they ended up announcing it. I think there's a little bit like to try and get that feel-good factor back, which fantastic, because obviously that's what you have to do. But I signed that deal obviously for Sam, knowing Sam was going to be the manager and wanting to carry on for him. That's not to say I didn't want to play for any other manager after that, but that was for me, a real gutting and disappointing moment when that happened.
Yeah, I mean, Graham Barrow seemed an absolutely top fella. You sort of mentioned before at Fylde. Was he the right man for the job at that time? Did you sort of feel a little bit sorry for him? Because it was obvious after a couple of weeks that he actually didn't really want to do it, did he?
I think, no. I remember having a chat with Graham and him saying he didn't really want to do it full time initially. I think we then won a couple of games, and Graham, I think the club were then like a little bit like, well, actually, maybe he could do it. And I think, to be fair, I think Graham thought, actually, I probably could do this. Like, I think maybe the couple of wins was a false. I don't know how to describe it, but he was like the perfect number two, and he would have been I think he would have been the perfect number two for Brian Hughes too, which was a shame that it didn't work out like that. He was a great bloke, again, somebody I love working with, a really funny character. Really had some great big time banter. Like obviously won the FA Cup as Roberto Martinez is either number two or first team coach or whatever at Wigan. Just like, he was a funny guy, and obviously older generation, but like come out, we'd do boxes to warm up or whatever, and he'd get the groups together, right, FA Cup winners in my group, and obviously he'd walk over and stand by himself. Then he'd look back round, he'd be like, FA Cup semi-finalists, anybody? 2 times FA Cup semi-finalists. He was fantastic, like, but brought a little bit of because Sam didn't really lose his head as such. If we lost, it was just part of the process for Sam. Like, he was very methodical, didn't get too carried away when we won. Obviously we won majority games. If we lost, it didn't really affect him and the way he wanted to do things. Whereas Graham just brought that bit of steeliness as well. Like, if somebody needed digging out, he would dig them out, a little bit old school, and that's why they work so well together. But definitely, going back to your question, probably wasn't. Well, it wasn't the right appointment. And then, I'm assuming it would have been Graham's decision to appoint Mike Newell as number two. That was just never worked out whatsoever. Like, and obviously we end up losing the 4 games on the spin, and that ultimately cost us the title. Really, when you look back, it was them 4 games, like, which is gutting. But as frustrating as that is, looking back, that's the one season, especially out of the 4 years at Wrexham, like I'd probably have the most regrets over, is in terms, nothing that we could have done different from players' point of view, but like it should have been the one in the time I was there, I felt.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem like the squad seemed light years ahead of where it was the season before. Now, one player who did come in was Bobby Grant, and I remember when Bobby came in, I thought, wow, what a signing that was. It never really quite worked out for him. Anything you could put your finger on there for Bobby?
I think a little bit just unfortunate, as in terms of even the year after when we really struggled down the bottom. I think he scored 9 goals by, I don't know, maybe by Christmas sort of time. He'd actually scored a few goals, and if you look back, I think he'd missed like 2 or 3 penalties. And I think if you look back at that first half of the season, we were like down near the bottom. We'd drawn so many games, and every game we lost was by 1 goal. I think apart from one game where we lost 4-1 or 4-2 at Hartlepool, every game we lost was like really tight. And that season could have been so different if just we had a few fine moments early on, where if a few more goals had gone in for Bob, like where they'd hit the bar or he missed a penalty, or we played Yeovil at home. I remember nodding one down to him in the last minute and he put it over the bar from like 3 yards. It just never quite went for him for whatever reason that may be. I do remember talking to Bob and Bobby saying to me like he was surprised at the level of how good the level was, of how physical it was, because in terms of like he'd used to played League One, League Two, but I think come from League One at the time, saying like it was a lot tougher than what he thought initially it was going to be. And I think a lot of players find that anyway when they first drop down to the National League. I think it's become players are now more aware that actually the level's a good level and most teams that come up do pretty well. But yeah, maybe a little bit naive to start with, but I think he was just a little bit unfortunate. He was a bit outspoken at times, but he was a good guy. Trained, looked after himself well. I think a little bit unfortunate at times, and that it didn't quite work out a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Just before I sort of hand over to maybe Rich to have sort of like a critique of the season, and then Reece to carry it on. For me, Brian Hughes was a left field appointment. I did not see that one coming. If the players are the same. I mean, again, he's a Wrexham legend. Seems a really good guy, but I know that the Wrexham Support Trust had sort of had a thing of picking managers like Dean Keates, like Sam Ricketts for their first time. I just wonder if they maybe got it slightly wrong with Brian. I don't know what you thought.
I think I didn't see it coming. I didn't have a clue who they were going to appoint, but that was the same with Sam in the summer. Didn't have a clue. What I would say is I think they just tried to go with a continuity. And I think and this is nothing against Darlow and Brian Flynn, who obviously ended up working on the Brian Hughes. I think if Graham Barrow would have stayed as number 2, I think if they'd have done that transition straight away, I'm not saying it definitely would have, nobody knows, but I think that would have just worked better. Graham was a really good number 2 for a first-time manager, I felt, as in terms of just the experience he brought and things like that, and how he'd been in the game so recently, and he'd spent time at Fylde at that level. I think he knew how to approach it and complement a manager, and I just think he would have done that a bit better. But that's obviously in hindsight again. And if you look back at the end of that season, the first season Brian used to go over, we finished the season pretty well, really. What I would say is we had a clear way of playing, which Sam had put into us from the start of the season, and it was a continuity of that. I would say players knew the roles, knew the jobs, and we managed to keep it going. And you look back really at the playoff game, like we couldn't have done any more. Really, we had a perfectly good goal disallowed, penalty that should have been given. We hit the bar. We battered them, and then we concede an absolute wonder goal. An absolute wonder goal. And fair play to Danny Holmes. That was a great strike, but it was just frustrating. Frustrating that it ended that way. It felt like we deserved more than to lose in the elimination the first game. It felt like maybe we could have gone to Salford if you get beat. Just felt like we deserved to have more at the end of that year. But that's football and that's the way it goes. So you have to, as horrible as it is, you have to suck it up.
Rich, just bringing you in, I think the burning question from this season is who would win a fight between Mike Fondop and Shaun Pearson?
Mike Fondop, hands down. Rob Lainton's looked after him big time. Yeah, I think for me that season I think that probably does sum up our time in the National League the best, where the highs and lows of that season, even in that last playoff game, because that's the season we beat Salford 5-1 at home, didn't we, at Christmas? And I think it was after that game, I think everybody thought Graham Barrow was absolutely the right man, and we were going to just steamroller our way through to win the league. But I think if you were to say that perfectly sums up Wrexham, that I think the reason there was so much animosity towards Sam Ricketts when he left is I think the majority of us agree with what Shaun's saying, which is I think we all felt that if he was there for the whole season, I think we all know we probably, and as Shaun said, you can't guarantee anything, but I think we probably would have gone up. And I think that's why everybody took it so personally, really, when Sam Ricketts left us, because that did feel at the time a group of players that were performing better than we'd seen over the previous couple of years, and the style of play was very obvious, and you just got the impression that everybody knew what their jobs were, and every game that they went into, they knew what they were meant to do, and when that towards the end of the season obviously wasn't happening as much, then unfortunately we had our Wrexham moment where there was a perfectly good goal disallowed. I can't remember who scored it from the corner. Not somebody scores many goals, but a guy scored in the playoff. Was it?
No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was Kennedy. It was me that got given the foul against.
That's right. Yeah, I thought he scored the goal. And you watch that goal back time and time again. There's literally nothing wrong with it.
I always remember that referee actually got on with believe it or not, I actually got on really well with most of the referees. But I remember seeing that referee at Solihull the following season, and I remember him saying to me, basically, that game cost him promotion as well.
Yeah,
which I felt for him really, because he was a good, he was actually a good guy.
Yeah. But he cost me my summer of enjoying myself, so I'm glad he lost that.
Yeah, but it cost him his promotion as well. So I suppose it does show that it does have an effect on officials as well, so to speak.
Do you think, Shaun? Do you think, obviously, like Sam's left, gone to Shrewsbury? Do you reckon he'll ever get back into football?
I don't think so now. I think it's hard for him to come back now, really, is in terms, I think if you leave the game, it's so difficult then to get back in. I've not spoke to him for a little while. Actually, obviously did the pod. I listened to the podcast that you did with him, and I spoke to him a little bit after that, and said, but I think he started a new business up now, and I think he's sort of happy with where he went. Which I think is a real shame. I think he had a lot to offer. He was definitely obviously young and still learning and whatever as a manager, but I think he had a lot to offer and could have done some good things. But I suppose he's in a position where he don't want to come back into it, and that's obviously his choice.
Thanks very much to Shaun for sharing his time with us. Top guy, and there's a lot more to come and more good stuff to come next week in part 2. So please do tune in for that one. Quickly, last couple of minutes. We've got 2 games this week. Wigan in the League Cup on Tuesday night, and then Wimbledon on Saturday, AFC Wimbledon. Tim, what are your thoughts? I think Parky's already said there's going to be lots of changes, but how do you see them panning out?
Yeah, Wigan had a decent win. I know they're still in minus points territory after their deduction and relegation. I still kind of feel they probably maybe have too much for us on Tuesday. I don't know why. It's just a hunch. I just think we make a load of changes. We'll put up a good fist of it, but maybe we might not get over the line. So I don't see us doing too great in that one, but you never know. We had a decent run in the cups last year, didn't we? So it would be nice to have a go, just because it's our first time back in it in ages. But it wouldn't be a massive disaster if we do bow out early, to be honest. So I think we'll probably lose that one, and then AFC Wimbledon. Well, looking forward to that. I've been having a look at their ground before. It's a really, really nice setup down there. Really nice, spanking new ground. I think it's only been open 4 years. Be an interesting game. They drew at Grimsby, so they're a bit tighter at the back than what we were at the weekend. And I think we're still easing ourselves into this season. I don't think we'll lose, but I think will probably come away from that with a draw, which is by no means a bad result.
Yeah, I think everyone loves a cup run, don't they? So it'd be great to get a win on Tuesday, but it's a tough ask. Hopefully, at least we'll have a really good performance live on Sky as well. But next Saturday, I agree, and I think it'd be really good to go away again. But I think performances matter more than anything at the moment. After shoring up the defence, it'd be great if we could go away to somewhere like the Cherry Red Records Stadium and get a draw, come away with a 1-1 or 0-0, show that we've solidified a little bit and can do it away from home. Andy, thoughts? You'll be at the AFC Wimbledon game, won't you?
Yeah, I'm going there. Looking forward to it. One of the grounds I've never been to in any guise. I think I've got a sneaker we might win there. Just another word on Waters. I feel I was very tough on him earlier, but the pace that guy has, he might be better away from home than he is at home, and he could still have a part to play on that. So I wouldn't completely discount him. Have
you got Billy Waters there as our modern day Juan Ugarte on that basis?
But people have good runs, and let's not completely write the fella off. He didn't have a great game on Saturday.
Sorry, you were the bloke that wrote him off earlier, so don't start telling us not to write him off.
Yeah, but you just do as I say, not as I do.
But I'd also, no one listens to the podcast after the interviews are finished anyway, so all they've heard is you slag him off.
At least if I got an irate Billy Waters coming after me, I can say, well, actually, Billy, did you actually listen to the whole of the podcast where I was singing your praises after?
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Right. He could come off the bench and he could score, and I reckon we're going to win 2-1.
Okay. Liam, Wigan and Wimbledon, how do you see them going?
Wigan, I'm not sure what to expect in terms of the starting lineup after Parky's post-match comments. It's quite a hard one, but I'll go for... Do we have to finish... How does this match work? Do we have to finish it on the night? This is all new territory to me.
Andy is nodding.
Yeah, no replays.
Right. So I can't. Well, I suppose I could go for a 1-1 draw.
Fair enough. And then Wimbledon?
I'm going to sound so negative now, but I'm going to say a 2-1 defeat.
Cool. That's all for us. The Positive Fearless in Devotion podcast. The Whingers. Hopefully,
we do whinge after everything's so terrible after a 5-3 defeat, isn't it? And then, we didn't whinge much last year because we absolutely won everything. But there will come a time where you do sort of see faults in things, and there was a lot of faults on Saturday. But let's not get too downhearted. We've got a great squad.
Did you leave early? I know Liam wanted to get this in.
I didn't leave early.
About a minute.
Yeah.
Go on.
You got to take the bad with the good, haven't you? That's what I think.
I've never left a sport. Yeah, I've never left a sporting event early. People are obviously entitled to do what they want, but I've always found it a profoundly odd thing to do. Still, that's that. To be more positive, as we were saying earlier, it's a good time to get a reality check. It's an awfully long way to go in this division. It's not like the National League where you have to get 100 points to get promoted. There's 3 automatic promotion spaces up for grabs. I think that's far from our minds at the moment, but let's just settle into the league first and see how we go. Please do join us next week. You can email us. Tim will check it. He'll do his biannual check of the email account this week. Sure. So please do email us at fidzine@gmail.com and follow us on every other thing.
Like and subscribe and give us a review and all that jazz. That'd be wonderful. Buy us a coffee if you think this is worth it. It would be very nice and very handy. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Best of luck to everyone. Who am I wishing good luck to?
Me.
Andy. Good luck, Andy.
Thanks.
And are you going to send Paul Mullin more love and respect and hopefully be in the weigh-in at Wimbledon next week?
I'm praying on a lung. I brought an animal lung from the butcher, and what I'm doing, I'm just sort of like praying on it.
I thought as Andy was responsible for the whole lettuce Liz Truss thing, I thought you were gonna set one up on a live stream then and sort of live stream Mullin's lung. Can Mullin's lung repair quicker than this one?
then this one dissipates. Yeah, that's a great idea, actually.
And on that note, bye. See you next week.
See ya.
Take care.
Keep the faith.